Hello and welcome back to our CTET exam preparation series. In this particular session, we will be talking about CTET Paper 1 Language PYQs from the year December 2024 paper. When it comes to our CTET Paper 1, we have two options. We have to choose one as Language 1 and one as Language 2. You can give preferences based on your choice and also your ability. So we can use English as our preference for language 1, or if you would like, you can give English as your preference for language 2. So whenever you are attempting the CTET paper 1, make sure to attempt based on the language that you have given as your preference. So now in today's discussion, we will be talking about when English is considered as preference as language 1 and also when English is considered as preference for language 2. So we will be solving all the questions, whether you give English as preference of language 1 or 2, we will be solving all the questions. So when it comes to the pattern of questions, we have two different segments in our language 1 and language 2. So this segment, it consists of unseen passages or poems and also questions related to language pedagogy. So in this session, we will be discussing the questions that are related to language pedagogy. Let us not delay any further and see the first question in front of us. Mother tongue based multilingualism advocates that. So in the present policies and documents and also in our schools, right now we are promoting multilingualism. We should look at the diversity of languages that the students bring into the classroom as a particular resource to our language learning. So when we talk about that, when we are trying to give importance to multilingualism, what does it advocate when it comes to mother tongue? Let us see the options in front of us. The first option, all children begin their schooling in English medium and in home language. Option 2, all children study Hindi as their first language. Option 3, all children begin their schooling in their mother tongue or home language. Option 4, all children begin their schooling in the language of the state. सो जो हमारी नई एजुकेशन पॉलिसी है उसमें बहुत एम्फेसिस दिया गया है कि हमारी जो मदर टंग और होम लैंग्वेज है उसी से हम अपने इनिशियल ईयर्स ऑफ स्कूलिंग करें ताकि जो हमारे सीखने की क्षमता है वो भी बढ़ जाती है. तो यहाँ पर एक ऑप्शन है जो इस बारे में बात कर रहा है. सो क्लियरली द फर्स्ट आंसर हियर वुड बी ऑप्शन 3, ऑल चिल्ड्रन बिगिन देयर स्कूलिंग इन देयर मदर टंग और होम लैंग्वेज. मूविंग ऑन टू द नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन. Mark the incorrect statement among the following regarding text comprehension strategies. So, we have discussed various ways of reading a text, and here they are discussing about skimming and scanning. So, we use skimming and scanning based on the objective that we have when we are reading or trying to comprehend a particular text. Let us look at the options. Option 1, skimming is more apt for reviewing while scanning helps more with answering particular questions. Option 2, both skimming and scanning involve rapid eye movement through the text. Skimming involves going through the text rapidly while scanning involves looking for specific facts. Option 4, skimming is more about in-depth reading while scanning is more of cursory reading. So both skimming and scanning are trying to have objectives which involve rapid eye movement and also just having a quick glance and based on the objective reading the text. So skimming is done just to have an overall view and get the summary of the text that a person is reading. So the right option here will be option 4, which is talking the opposite. Skimming is not about in-depth reading. So that is why option 4 is the right answer here. Let us move on and see the next question. When children start using language to ask about things, events and phenomenon around them, which of the following functions of language is used more than the other? So there are various functions of language, but when it comes to asking about things, event and phenomenon and trying to have an inquiry approach, which of these functions come into play? So let us look at the 4 options: informative, heuristic, imaginative, and regulatory. So the correct answer here is the heuristic function. Next, which of the following features of human language enables humans to talk about things which are not present in immediate time and space? So, in languages, we are able to use and we are able to talk about things which are existing in a different time and space. We have various tenses which we use while communicating. So, if you try to relate it and try to find out the keyword time and space, is not immediate. So, if you try to relate it to a science concept which talks about space and difference in the time and movement, so let us see the four options here. It will be very easy for you to answer. The first option is structure dependence. Option 2, discreteness. Option 3, displacement. And option 4, arbitrariness. So, clearly the answer here is displacement. The next question is, which of the following skills is not considered as a mark of reading with comprehension? So when you look at these options here, what you need to see is which of it is not considered as a mark of reading with comprehension. So reading with comprehension is the key word here. Organizing and assessing the sequence of the events or ideas, mentally summarizing the text read till now, focusing on individual letters or alphabets, and anticipating the content ahead. When you are reading a particular text, you will definitely anticipate. If you are trying to understand the story or the text that you are reading, you will anticipate of what may be coming next. This reading with comprehension, it also involves organizing and assessing the sequence of various ideas and events flow. And then whatever we read, we try to mentally summarize it so that we keep understanding it well and try to see what is coming next. So the right answer here would be option 3, focusing on individual letters or alphabets is not the major skill that is required while reading with comprehension. Let us see the next question. Which of the following is not a feature of the grammar translation method of second language teaching? So there are various methods of teaching grammar. Here they have specifically asked about the grammar translation method when we are teaching the second language in our classrooms. So the options that we have here are option 1, communicating directly in second language and then comparing the rules of grammar of the two languages. Option 2, focusing more on the form than the function of the language. And option 3, comparing the grammatical rules of the first and second language. And option 4, learning and practicing the rules of grammar of the second language. So if you look at the four options, what we need to find out here is which of it is not a feature of grammar translation method. So if you have read and understood the grammar translation method, you will be able to answer this question very easily. So basically, the grammar translation method, it talks about the effect of the first language and also trying to relate the rules in the second language as well. So clearly the answer here would be option 1, that is communicating directly in second language and then comparing the rules of grammar of the two languages. This is not a feature of grammar translation method. Let us move on to the next question. A teacher asks her students to reflect on how they have answered an experience-based question she gave them and what and how they were thinking when they wrote that answer. This is an example for. So, a teacher has given an assessment to the students and she has asked the students to answer based on their experience. So, this particular question students will be answering based on their own experiences. And after the students have answered it, the teacher wants to know what and how they were thinking. What was the thinking process while they were answering this particular question. So, this is basically a question that the teacher is asking to know them to reflect on their own thinking skills. So thinking about their own thinking. So this particular process is called, or it should be an example for clearly metacognition. So the right answer here is metacognition. Moving on to the next question. Which of the following among Krashen's hypothesis is similar to Vygotsky's ZPD? zone of proximal development. So the first option here is natural order hypothesis. Option 2, effective filter hypothesis. Option 3, input hypothesis. And option 4, monitor hypothesis. So when you look at the four options, and we have to talk about Krashen's hypothesis, which is similar to Vygotsky's ZPD, it is basically talking about that whenever an input is given, it has to be above the level what the child already knows. Then it becomes easier to learn. So these inputs which are given while learning should be slightly higher than what we already know, or it should be built on the prior knowledge. So the right answer here is option 3, input hypothesis. The next question is, according to Cummins' interdependence hypothesis, read the word carefully, interdependence hypothesis. Which of these are interdependent on each other? So we need to tell which of the two things are interdependent on each other. Let us look at the options here. Option 1, reading and writing in second language, and option 2, basic interpersonal skills in the first and second language. Option 3, comprehension and production in second language. Option 4, cognitive academic proficiency in first and second language. So Cummins has given this particular interdependence hypothesis in order to discuss or talks about the second language learning. And then how and when and what are the relationship between the proficiency in the first and second language. So the right answer here would be cognitive academic proficiency in the first and second language, which is the option 4. Let us move on to the next question. Which of the following does not justify starting reading skills with words and short story texts instead of letters and alphabets? So instead of letters and alphabets, and also the question is asking does not justify. So which of these does not justify starting reading skills with words and short stories instead of starting it from the letters and alphabets? So now let us look at the four options. The first one is words and texts are more interesting but letters are not. Option 2, separate letters are more difficult to memorize than words. Option 3, beginner readers can focus better on bigger units than smaller units. And option 4, words and text create meaningful association which the letters fail to do. So we need to tell which does not justify. So the correct answer here is option 3. Beginner readers can focus better on bigger units than the smaller units. Moving on to the next question. Which of the following is linguistically correct about language and dialects? So now this question is about language and dialects, and we need to tell which of these options is linguistically correct. Now let us see the four options in front of us. Option 1, languages have their own script but the dialects do not have their own script. Option 2, there is no well-defined linguistic difference between a language and a dialect. Option 3, languages have written literature but dialects are only based on oral tradition. Option 4, languages and dialects are linguistically different but geographically same. So these are the four options in front of us, and we have to tell which of these is correct about languages and dialects. So we already know that language has its own scripts but dialects do not have its own script. So the first option will not be the right answer. We have languages have written literature but dialects are only based on oral tradition. This is also not correct because we are talking about linguistically correct. So when we do that, the correct answer here is option 2. There is no well-defined linguistic difference between a language and a dialect. Moving on to the next question. Veera is a 7-month-old infant. She is now making vocalizations that combine consonants and vowels. She is communicating using which of the following? So a very small infant is trying to vocalize and combine various vowel and consonant sounds. So when this happens, which communication way she's using here is what they have asked in the question. So the four options that we have is option 1, cooing, option 2, a linguistic speech, and option 3, phonemes, and option 4, babbling. So a 7-month-old child is definitely babbling. Let us move on to the next question. So the next question is, which of the following is not explained by the concept of language acquisition device? So let us look at the options. How children learn figurative language, why the linguistic output of children is more than the input they get, option 3, how children learn their first language, and option 4, how children are able to learn language within a short span of 4 to 5 years. So the language acquisition device, it is one of the things that we have discussed when it comes to language acquisition. So the right answer here, which is not explained by the language acquisition device, is option 1, how children learn figurative language. Let us move on to the next question. So the next question is, in a speech community, it is observed that S is pronounced differently by two different socio-economic groups of speakers. This difference is an example of option 1, a socio-cultural variable, option 2, a socio-psychological variable, option 3, a socio-linguistic variable, and option 4, a pragmatic variable. So the right answer here, as we can see, the community that is we are speaking about here are two different socio-economic groups of speakers. So when we talk about two different socio-economic groups of speakers, the right answer here would be a socio-linguistic variable. Now we have finished what was part of when you choose English as your language 1. Now we will look at previous year questions which were your options to be attempted if you are choosing English as your language 2. So in this segment also the same pattern is followed. There is an unseen passage or a prose or poem, and then we have questions related to language pedagogy. So we will now look at questions related to language pedagogy. So the first one is, which one of the following is not true about an assessment? Let us look at the options. It helps to evaluate the pace of a student's progress. Option 2, it can only be done by the teacher. Option 3, it provides a holistic view of the student's progress. And option 4, it presents concrete evidence of the student's performance. So which is not true of assessment? If you look at the option, there is one option which is not related to assessment or not true about assessment. So that will be option 2. It can only be done by the teacher. We have already discussed self-assessment, peer assessment. So it cannot just be done by the teacher. There are other people who are also involved. The child themselves self-assessment or having their peers being assessing them. It is called peer assessment. So all of that is true for assessment. All the other 3 statements are also true. We use assessment to evaluate the pace of students' progress. We also want to know a holistic view of the students' progress. It also presents it with concrete evidence of the students' performance. These are all related to assessment and are true statements. So the right answer here is option 2. Let us look at the next question. Error analysis is important in order to look at the gaps in learning because. Why error analysis is important? This is one of the important topics for CTET examination. Now let us look at the options. Errors indicate a lack in the understanding of the learners. Errors show extent of concept development and motivation. Most errors are caused by careless attitude of the learners. And errors are a window into the minds of the learners and their stage of learning. So here there is one option which is very appropriate when we talk about how making an error does not mean that the child doesn't know anything and will not be able to learn anything. It is only giving us an opportunity to find out what the child needs more help with, or at what stage of learning the child is. It is just giving us an understanding of what the child knows already and where it needs a little bit of scaffolding. So the right answer here is option 4, that is, errors are a window into the minds of the learners and their stage of learning. Now let us look at the next question. Which of the following is not true regarding the monitor hypothesis given by Stephen Krashen? Let us look at the options. Option 1, what is acquired helps in monitoring what is learnt. Option 2, the learner can only monitor if she or he has enough time and enough knowledge of the rules. Option 3, it is used in the context of second language acquisition. And option 4, it is based on the relationship between acquisition and learning. So we have 4 options in front of us and we need to tell which is not true about the monitor hypothesis that is given by Stephen. So the right answer here is what is acquired helps in monitoring what is learnt. This particular option is the right answer here and it is not true when it comes to the hypothesis given by him. So let us now look at the next question. Which of the following is not an example of formative assessment? So we have discussed a lot on formative and summative assessment and also seen in that this is a repeated question in CTET examination. So now let us see the options in front of us and we need to point out which is not true of formative assessment. Option 1, a combination of a comprehensive written test and few other tasks scattered over a period of time. Option 2, assessment strategies ranging from short tests to peer reviews throughout the session. Option 3, a series of oral and written tasks, role play, etc. throughout the session. And option 4, a term paper at the end of the session. Clearly, there is one option which is not true of formative assessment, which is option 4, a term paper at the end of the session. It is talking more about summative assessment rather than formative assessment. So let us move on to the next question. When a beginner reader uses his or her general knowledge about the text theme, cultural aspects, etc. to make sense of the specific textual content, it is called. So what kind of approach the beginner reader is using? It is moving from knowing the text theme, it is trying to learn the cultural aspects and etc. through his or her general knowledge, what is already present with them, the prior knowledge that the beginner reader is having. So the 4 options in front of us are bottom-up approach, bottom-down approach, top-down approach and top-up approach. So clearly the right answer here is top-down approach, using the prior knowledge of the learner and then trying to understand the theme and cultural aspects of the given text. So now let us move on to the next question. Which of the following would not help in textual comprehension and vocabulary development? So from all the 4 option that we have here, the various TLMs that they have mentioned, so which will not help in textual comprehension and also vocabulary development? So the options are theme maps, picture dictionaries, word maps, alphabet charts. So which will not help in contextual comprehension? So comprehension will be the key word here which will help us to answer this question. So the option 4, alphabet charts, it will not help us in textual comprehension and vocabulary development. Let us see the next question. Which of these statements is correct regarding the 2 major types of assessment? So now this question is also about assessment and we need to identify which statement is correct. First option is formative assessment goes on continuously through the learning phase. Summative assessment is done before and during the learning phase. Formative assessment focuses on the form rather than the function of learning, and summative assessment is about the sum total every form of assessment throughout the year. So we need to identify which is the correct one here. So the right answer here is formative assessment. It goes on continuously throughout the learning phase. Let us move on to the next question. Which of the following does not help in creating an inclusive classroom? Adopting a multilingual approach, having some students as monitors in the class, peer group interaction and feedback system, giving team tasks. So when we are talking about an inclusive classroom or trying to have an inclusive setup in our classroom, we will encourage multilingualism, we will appreciate the diversity that we have, we will try to create instances for our learners to have cooperative and also collaborative tasks and activities. So there is only one option which is talking otherwise, having some students as monitors in the class, which can create a hegemony in the class, a differentiation between the students. So the right answer here is option 2, having some students as monitors in the class. The next question is, reading or writing P as B or 6 as 9 is a common error among children with. So this is about learning disability. This question is coming from that part of the syllabus of our CTET examination. So the options are anomia, dyslexia, stuttering and aphasia. So we have already discussed this learning disabilities in our concept learning of these language papers. So the right answer here is the same that the child in Tare Zameen Par is having, and they have highlighted it. So what Ishan was suffering from, that is the answer here. That is option 2, dyslexia. Moving on to the next question. Basic interpersonal communicative skills is known as. So the basic interpersonal communicative skill, the very word is giving us what it is meant for. So basically, what is it? Let us look at the options. Option 1, language used for day-to-day communication. Option 2, interlanguage. Option 3, higher order language skills. And option 4, language of abstraction. So if we are talking about the basic interpersonal skill, clearly the easiest option here, the direct answer here is option 1, that is language used for day-to-day communication. Moving on to the next question. A teacher teaching English as second language to Hindi-speaking students provides them contexts and opportunities to engage in little conversation in English without telling them explicit rules. She presents examples before them which they use in their conversations. Gradually, they come up with rules on their own with the help of the teacher. Which model or approach do you think the teacher is following? So this is a very good example of how we should be teaching grammar, and the right answer will be the option which talks about using the language first and then slowly, gradually moving on to the rules, and the child able to develop or identify the commonalities and thereby coming up with the rule. So the options are the communicative approach, option 2, direct method, option 3, grammar translation method, and option 4, audiolingual method. So the right option here is the communicative approach. Moving on to the next question. Which of the following is not a feature of communicative approach? So we have just spoken about communicative approach in the last question. Let us see which is not a feature of communicative approach. Discovering rules of grammar instead of teaching explicitly, developing communicative competence, more focus on form than function, contextualized use of language. So here 3 options are correctly talking about what communicative approach is and how we should learn language or the grammar of a language by communicating, using it in the context and discovering the rules as and when we are using the language in various contexts. So the right answer here would be more focus on form than function. The communicative approach, it talks or emphasizes more on the function rather than the form. So the next question is, which genre of stories are the most relevant to propagate multilingualism and multiculturalism? So whenever we are talking about propagating multilingualism and also telling children about culture, various kind of cultures that exist in our country, so what kind of stories, which genre of stories we should look into? Let us look at the examples. Science fiction, lengthy tale, folk tales and autobiography. Clearly, there is only one option which is talking about the culture of the folks, a culture that is practiced in various communities or people of different languages. So, the right answer here is the folk tales. The next question is, which of the following is not a desirable feature in children's literature? So, when it comes to developing children's literature or what is expected when it comes to children's literature, what is not desirable? Let us look at the four options. Big font size and familiar words. This is definitely needed. Attractive pictures. Attractive pictures are needed in children's literature so that it keeps them engaged. The next is animal characters. Animal characters make the learning interesting. And the fourth option is explicit moral values. What we talk about is the moral values should be implicit and not explicit. That is why the right option here is option 4. Explicit moral values are not a desirable feature in children's literature. Coming to the last question of our series, which of the following is not considered a major domain of learning? So, when you talk about various domains of learning, the Bloom's taxonomy, one of this is not a major domain. Affective, psychomotor, cognitive, and the fourth option is socio-cultural. So, only one of these is not considered as a major domain, which we already know. The right answer here is socio-cultural. So with this, we are coming to the end of this particular video. In today's video, we have discussed various questions if you are choosing to attempt English as your language 1 preference, or if you choose language English as your language 2. So in paper 1, these are the various kind of questions that came in the CTET 2024 December examination. So we will meet in the next videos in order to focus on our CTET exam preparation. Thank you so much.